Hello, leading ladies. It's me, Christy Schrader with Altered Story, here to share story number 3 of a 3-part series. It's okay if you missed the first 2, but I do encourage you to go back and listen of my altered stories. Just 3 different stories that I'd love to share to help to express to you some hope, some inspiration, some equipping as you go after God's purposes. So as we get started tonight, will you just let me know in the comments that you're here? Let me know where you're from. I would love to just be able to respond to any comments tonight, whether it's during our conversation or even afterwards. I would love to just still be in touch with you. So as we get started, I'm trying to see if it's on my phone, but I'm not sure. So I can see that you're here. Hi, thank you so much for joining us tonight. So as I said, we shared Monday, or actually Tuesday night and Wednesday night. Today is Thursday. And I was able to share on the first night about 3 tips to reach your full potential, to reach your, to go after God's purposes. The second night, I shared my secret on what transformed my life, really. And I hope that you'll tune into that because I know that it could really impact your own life. And tonight, I'm here to share 4 things that you must do to reach your full potential. And so just in case I'm new to you and you're watching me for one of the first times, my name is Christy Schrader, like I said. I've been a pastor's wife for over 20 years. I went to North Central University, which was a Bible college when I started and a university when I finished, for psychology, and I have a bachelor's in psychology. And I did use that a little bit after school in the field. But then when I had my baby in 2003, I ended up staying home and being a stay-at-home mom with 2 sons. They're 14 and 17. And we have lived here in central Wisconsin for over 15 years, all of their lives, basically. And I've been very active in the church, like I shared the last couple nights. Even during the times where I didn't have a job outside the home, I was volunteering at church, sometimes almost full-time or part-time, and just loving that, doing small groups, event planning, all of that kind of stuff, until both of my boys went to school, and I realized it was my opportunity to get outside the home and get back into the workforce. And so I was able to find a job working just 14 hours a week. It was during the school days. It would work out perfectly with my kids' schedules. And not only that, but my job, I believed, was meaningful because I was helping a Christian financial company help people be wise with their money. And part of my job was recruiting financial advisors. And so because I value so much that we live a life that impacts others, I was able to plug people into a career that was just perfect for them and to do something that I believe can transform lives as people become wise with money. And thankfully, over those years that I worked there, I was able to learn some things that helped me too. But what happened is my hours went from 14 hours to 24 hours to 32 hours, up to 40 hours a week. And during that time, my boss was amazing and allowed me to do way beyond my job description. It was a small office. And so even though I was hired to be basically an executive assistant, I was doing recruiting, event planning, and lots of things that were outside of that job description. But those were the things I loved. And I think he knew how to get me engaged, and we just had a lot of fun as a team. So that was all great. But then over time, as changes happened in the overall larger company, they ended up shifting my role personally back to more of those administrative tasks. And I had less autonomy to do some of those other things that I loved. And I don't know if you've had jobs where they transition over time. That's totally normal. But you grow as a person. And I sort of got to that point where I had outgrown my job, I felt like. But the only upward mobility there would be to become a financial advisor, and I had no interest in that. So it got to that point where I was really restless in my job, and I felt like there had to be something new. And it was during this time that I started listening to different podcasts from Christian creative business owners. And if you heard my story earlier, you know that I was making things out of vintage books and selling them at art fairs and on Etsy to help raise money for human trafficking victims, because that became a passion of mine. And as I was listening to these online podcasts, I was just kind of dreaming for how could I possibly do this, maybe as a side hustle. And during that time, I started to put on purpose parties, I called them, and we combined living with meaningful, purposeful things. We would talk about that in groups of women at these parties while we made something creative, like vision boards or one-word banners. If you ever came to one of those or participated, feel free to comment in the comments about that. But I loved doing that, and I loved just giving an opportunity for women to realize that they could live with purpose, just like God showed me through trying to help with human trafficking. So I'm doing all this, and as I'm listening to these the podcasts about online businesses, I learn about online courses, online memberships, and I start to dream about having like virtual purpose parties that I might be able to share with more women online. And I'm stirring and I'm stirring. And as I was at my job, what I call it now, looking back, which you don't feel like this when it's happening, but I feel like it was a healthy discontent. God was stirring up something inside of me to let me know that there was something more, there was something coming, and I needed to be getting ready for it. And I would love to tell you that happened on Monday, and by Friday, he had me doing my dream job. But it actually took a number of years of really just praying and seeking and reading the Bible and journaling and just like trying to get it all out. Like, I'm feeling so agitated. I just need to do something different. I don't know, am I supposed to leave? There's so many options when you are ready to move on from a position. But I stuck there. And my husband, who's always been a huge dream supporter, he's the one who, when I talked to you about me earlier in 2008, feeling like I had no interests, no passions, he's the one who's always just had passions and interests. And he always is helping me to look how I can move forward and do something more. And during that time where I felt sort of stuck at my job, not sure where I would go or what I would do, he gave me this little ampersand. And this was representing, and he told me this when he gave me, which he's the sweetest. He said, Christy, this isn't all there is for you. God has something more for you. Your story and I want to just encourage you with this today that no matter what your circumstances and no matter where you're at today, God truly has an and for you. He has something more for you. And for me, sharing my story tonight and everything I want to share tonight, it's to get you to be ready to move into whatever that is more effectively, more consciously about what you might face and how you can get through it. And maybe even just recognize where you're at right now. Like maybe you're in one of these stages, or maybe you're experiencing some of what I'm talking about. Feel free to comment if you are, or just raise your hand or like it, because I know that my story is not totally unique. We all face times of healthy discontent. And if you're in that right now, girl, I see you and I am here for you. So during that time, I just continued to listen to those podcasts. I continued to pray. I continued to seek God. But to be totally honest with you, I felt like I wasn't hearing from God at all during that time. I would pray, and I've had seasons where I hear from God, but I felt like I wasn't hearing anything, like brass ceilings. And I just felt like I couldn't get through and I couldn't get answers. I didn't know, did he want me to do this or that, or specifics, or even generals? And when I would tell my husband, like, I want to move, I want to do something, I want to do this, he was saying, I think that's coming. He gave me the and, but he said, I don't think it's now. I don't think it's now. And he kept saying, I don't think it's now. So hard to deal with, right? We have to be married and we have to honor our husbands. And so I just sat there, and I ended up asking God, to show me. He wasn't showing me. And I just continued on in my job. And I think I did my very best in that job and all the way through from when I was there. And I kept pursuing listening about online businesses. So anyway, we get to the point where I call Nathan from work, my husband, Nathan, and I was just sharing with him my frustrations that had happened that day. And he stopped me dead in this conversation and he said, Christy, I am feeling convicted of the Lord right now that you are supposed to quit your job and pursue Altered Story full time. I was totally stunned. And in Christy fashion, instead of being like, yay, I was like, no, I can't quit my job yet. I can't quit my job yet. I'm providing financially for us. I am the one with all the health insurance. What? I can't do it. I don't know. Like, now you're giving me permission, but now I don't know if I can do it. Have you ever done this, ladies? It's like, I'm so hard to please sometimes. So in the midst of my frustration, Nathan just asked if he can pray for me. I'm so thankful for him as a husband. He sat there and he started to pray for me. And again, in Christy fashion, you would think I would be like, amen, yes, Lord, whatever it is. But no, I was totally ignoring Nathan and I was praying in my own conversation with God. And I was telling him, God, I have to provide for my family. I have to provide the health insurance for my family. Like, I was just like desperate, but like, don't you see this, God? And he said to me, no, you don't, Christy. That's my job. I was stopped in my tracks and I just realized here I was praying and praying and praying for this answer. And now I wanted to sort of like take back whatever I had instead of trusting God to move forward. I was so grateful for that. He said, no, that's my job. And so when Nathan was done praying, I told him that. And of course, he was happy that God had spoken to me first. So after all that time seeking God, he spoke to Nathan first. But I'll take a second. I was hearing from God again. I heard him speak to me in that inaudible voice. And I was so grateful. So the first thing that you need to do to live up to your full potential that I want to share tonight, I can't talk, sorry, is to stay connected to God, especially in your waiting. If I hadn't been continuing to read the Bible and pray, and, of course I didn't do it perfectly, ladies. I'm not pretending to be something I'm not. But I think we need to stay connected to God. We need to continue to sort of like open the door, like, Lord, I am here. Please come whenever you're willing to do it. Because then when he comes, you are ready. And I was fueled up with the word of God. I was fueled up with his truths. I was fueled up with like that healthy discontent I talked about. It made me ready for like, come on, baby, let's do this. Once I had that go ahead from him personally to me. And when you're in the middle of waiting, and when you're in the middle of, I was showing up at an empty office, working it was cold, and I just felt like this was a cave. I had to come and work by myself. And if you haven't gotten to know me yet, I'm a people person. And so it was a very difficult season for me. And looking back now, I can see the treasures in darkness that God talks about in his Bible. And I just want to encourage you that if you're in that dark place right now, you probably don't know it, but you are gathering treasures out of this season. And especially with me, now that I work with women who are wanting to live with purpose, I have my own story of living through a job I hated. Don't get me wrong, I loved everyone I worked with. You can hopefully understand I was just ready for something new. But I understand what that's like, and not to have that permission to move from God. And I can only encourage you, it's worth the wait. It's worth the wait for his timing, because when he said to go, it was definitely in his will. And looking back, I can see that now. The second thing that I want you to keep in mind to help you to reach your full potential is to exchange your negative mindsets for positive ones. Now, I don't know if you get a lot of messages about like mindset coaches and life coaches and business coaches. In my world, working with the online industry, I hear a lot of that. And so I I guess poo-pooed it for a while and didn't think anything of it. But this last year, I had the privilege of working with a business coach, and really she was a mindset coach. And I'm going to keep meeting with her. We have worked on not just business stuff, but family stuff and church stuff and life stuff. And there is such power in changing your mindsets. And maybe you've already heard there's like, trails in your brain, pathways, I guess, that you can just think over and over and over again these same thoughts, and it keeps coming to you without even realizing it. Well, talking with her, I was saying things and she would repeat it to me, and I would say, You're right. I just said that. I didn't realize it. But sometimes, ladies, we need to consider what kind of thoughts we're thinking. And in just a super quick version, I'm going to tell you what you can do to shift that mindset that she's helped me with. Whatever you're thinking, think of what would be the exact opposite. And how could you get yourself to think that instead? And I'm not saying think of something that's not true. I want you to find out what is true. And if that exact opposite is too much to believe, scale down, scale back to what you can believe and to shift your mindsets. I'm going to share this. It's kind of embarrassing because I'm a business owner, but if I've got any entrepreneurs listening, I hope you'll hear me. Entrepreneurs are known for going from like the highest highs to the lowest lows, because in a day it can happen, up and down, different things can happen. And I was going through a time where I was just so frustrated with how it was going with my business. And I am 100% type, like everything or it's all terrible. Like always, never are two words that I use way too often. So I shared with my mindset coach, like, that I felt like maybe no one valued what I was doing in my business. And she sort of got me to the place where she's like, well, Christy, look at the ladies that have signed up for your sisterhood. Some people value your sisterhood, right? And I'm like, okay, some people value my sisterhood. So I tried to like start shifting my thing. And when I would think nobody values what I'm doing here, I would change it to, well, some people value it. Okay. So this is how we can shift our mindsets. But beyond what we can do personally, God can go over and above, because here's what happened to me. I was walking up the stairs of my house and the thought came to my head, nobody values what I'm doing. And so I immediately caught it and I was like, okay, some people value what I'm doing. Maybe that's true. And immediately God spoke to my heart, I value what you're doing. Like, I don't know about you, but people can say one thing and it sounds all great, but if God speaks to your heart, that's something different. And so I want you to invite God's supernatural presence as you shift these mindsets. Ask him what he is thinking about you too, because that is so powerful. And just shifting that has made me so much more confident about everything that I'm doing and offering. So it's been huge. That's just one of so many different shifts. So I encourage you, if you want to reach your full potential, the truth is you've probably got some negative mindsets or some mindsets that just aren't serving you well. So I want you to think right now, like, what do you think some of those are? Or if you don't think there is any, then as you go through your day tomorrow, if you catch a negative thought, decide how you might switch that around, or even ask the people in your house, like, do you think I have any negative mindsets? They'll tell you the truth. So hopefully you can get those switched around. Third, what I want to tell you to help you to reach your full potential is that you need to know when to let go of a dream. This is so hard, right? We hate to let go of our dreams. And there's so many broken hearts out there of dreams not come true. And the truth of the matter is that your life isn't all about that one magical divine destiny. We talked about that. Your life isn't about one dream, and if you don't accomplish that dream, you're a total failure. No, God has purposes for you each and every day. And so I want to encourage you to trust him with your dreams, with your biggest dreams. You all know the story of Abraham and Isaac. And Abraham, he heard God tell him to go and sacrifice his son Isaac. But when he got up to the mountain, God provided a ram instead, and he did not have to sacrifice Isaac. And maybe God would ask you to give up your dream. He's done this with my husband. My husband is a pastor, but he's had a number of times where he was so tempted to stop it all and become like a graphic designer because he loves art and he's great at that. There were times in life where God asked him to lay that down and stop doing graphic design. And he did it and he obeyed God. And God allowed him to take that back up again later. And if you know my husband's story, it's kind of crazy. He is like a signed musician. He's done synthesizer music on his own albums. He has illustrated books. these are things that just kind of fell into his lap. He's designed so many people's like book covers, CD covers. He's done it all while being a pastor. But I think if he didn't lay that down so long ago, that maybe it would have become too big for him. Maybe it would have been something that diverted his attention away from becoming a pastor. And so we just have to trust if God is asking us to lay something down, that he does have something better planned. Okay. For me, I had to lay down purpose parties this year. So the thing that got me excited to start my business a couple years ago, doing virtual purpose parties where we would combine art and connection with women, I felt like God was showing me that I needed to actually just focus in on my sisterhood and on my mastermind, and that was accomplishing more for what he wanted me to do to help women to grow in purpose than my purpose parties, and that those were sort of diverting from people knowing what do I actually do. I run a membership and a mastermind. It's that simple. And one word, ladies, that was my word last year, focus. And he really helped me focus in on what I'm doing. But that's a pruning. And so if God is doing a pruning in your life, he says that he is the vine and we are the branches. We have to trust him that maybe he's going to cut some parts off of us, but we know that something even more beautiful might grow in. And so that's what I'm trusting him, as I have pruned and allowed things to go away, that he has something even better. So it hurts when you get cut, right? It hurts to get pruned. But just trust that God does have something better. And if you will lay down a dream, or if you will let a dream go, maybe God will give it back to you again. Maybe he won't. But you can trust that he knows the plans and purposes that he has for you, and they're good. So hang on to that word, ladies. So tonight we just talked about staying connected to God as a way that will help you to fully reach your full potential. Even in the waiting, even in the darkness, you know that God is going to give you something that glows and that's going to bring you forward into something even better. You need to exchange your negative mindsets for positive ones to serve you better. And you need to focus on God's truth and focus on the things that are going to propel you forward instead of allowing that same old thought pattern to hold you back. And then you need to lay down your dreams if God asks you to do it. Leave it up to God if he wants you to pick them back up or not. He'll make that just as clear as well. So lastly, this is the one where I think you are not going to want to hear this. I don't know if the other ones have been already hard enough, but the one that I don't like the most is we need to admit that we are not in control and that God is. So I am so far behind knowing to let go of a dream and admit God is the only one truly in control. So I wanted to remind you guys that when God said that I didn't need to provide, that was his job, that was just one example of me needing to give up control. I love to get the budget and have the numbers all in order and know exactly where everything's coming from. And it was almost like jumping off a cliff to quit my job, a second income for our home, and to start something new with Altered Story, my business. And if you've ever jumped off a cliff in a proverbial sense for God, you know what I'm talking about. But God continues to show himself faithful. One example that I'll give you, and there are so many of him being my provider, just like he told me he would be, is that I had to have an unexpected surgery that first year, being out of work. And I ended up having a surgery that was $40,000. And God miraculously worked things out that was 100% paid for. I did not pay a cent for a $40,000 surgery. And I can only imagine that if I was still working in my beautiful, safe, cushy job, that I would have had to pay quite a high deductible, even with great health insurance. That's just one example of how God came through for me financially. He came through for me in so many different ways. And I just want you to know that when you realize that you're not in control, that can be so hard, but it's also the safest place you can be because God is going to take care of you. He is in control. He's the only one in control. We're just lying to ourselves if we think we're in control. But God is in control. And so I just encourage you to just look to him, ask him what he wants you to be doing. one last thing, just to tie it up from the previous talks that I've talked about with trafficking, is that I want to encourage you that reaching your full potential is going to look so different for each and every woman. There are so many ways that, even just when you think about working in the anti-trafficking world, what we could do to help with that. We could work with social services, we could give finances, we could volunteer our time, we could do so many different things. And for me, I have really come to just own the fact that my way of contributing to trafficking looks different than anybody else's. I shared that we have a Facebook group, Central Wisconsin Against Human Trafficking. I work on that. I do some speaking if need be, but that's not my favorite thing to do. But one thing I'm really excited about is that as I'm growing my business, Altered Story, I'm giving back a percentage of profits for the anti-trafficking cause to help organizations that are doing the work. And to be able to be not just a fundraiser like I've done in the past, but to be able to give out of my own finances is such a blessing. And so I just encourage you that your story will evolve. The ways that you impact your world are going to evolve. The way that you reach your full potential, you can't even imagine what that might look like. None of us can. And I'm not sitting here thinking I've reached my full potential. These are just things that we all need to do to continue to move on. So stay connected to God, exchange your negative mindsets for positive ones. Know that maybe sometime you're going to have to let go of a dream, and then admit that God is the only one truly in control. Let me show you this here. I just ask you now, which one do you think you could work on, or what one could you focus on this coming week? What do you think? And if you want to comment 1, 2, 3, or 4, that would be awesome. But where do you need to put your focus to be able to reach your full potential? Is it to stay connected to God, especially if you're in the waiting? Is it to exchange negative mindsets for positive ones? Is it to know that maybe this is time to let go of a dream, even if it's just for a while, trusting that if God wants to give it back to you, he will? Or is it admitting that God is the only one that's truly in control? All right. Well, ladies, I just want to thank you so much for joining me tonight to learn about how you can reach your full potential. There's so many other ways, of course, to reach your full potential, but I really believe if you do these things that you're going to go further faster than I did. I wanted to share what I've learned along the way so that you don't have to maybe trudge through all the stuff that I had to trudge through to get here. And if I can be of service to you at all in your life as you're going after God's purposes, please reach out to me. Our sisterhood doors do open next week for a membership in our mastermind. So keep us in mind if you'd like to join the sisterhood. You can learn more about that. Click on the link in the comments to get signed up for any kind of free offerings that we offer that maybe could help you out in your walk with God and walking towards purpose. So thank you for joining me tonight, and I'll get in the comments and respond if there's anything in there. So make sure to stay in touch and go after all of God's purposes. We want to alter our stories so that we can change the world. I really believe we can do that, and it starts with us transforming our own lives so that we can be a bigger and better impact on others. So take care. I believe in you, lady. Talk to you later.